Hey there, small business owners. Welcome to the Tax Talk Podcast, the premier business podcast aimed at unlocking your unique potential. I'm your host, Jared Pallon, and I help my clients do three things: find common sense business solutions, minimize tax and maximize profits, and preserve your legacy. Each podcast episode will dig deep into an everyday problem that small business owners face, and most importantly, explore solutions to these problems. You ready to solve problems? Are you ready to keep more of your hard-earned wealth? And are you ready to preserve your legacy? Let's get to it. Welcome to the Tax Talk Podcast in episode 6 of Bobcats, Bosses, and Breakups. Before I provide a little background on this series, I just wanted to introduce my guest today. Kelly Barber is a certified professional bookkeeper and owner of B Squared Bookkeeping. She has been providing full cycle bookkeeping to small and medium-sized businesses since 2015. I've had the privilege of working with Kelly for a couple of years now on a number of different client files. Always appreciated her attention to detail, her timely work, and her dedication to her clients. Kelly, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to join us today.
Thanks for having me, Jared.
For sure. So, real quick on the Bobcats, Bosses, and Breakups background. So, as we've kind of discussed before, looking back at a concrete business that I owned back in 2007, looking at some of the mistakes that I made as a small business owner, bringing in some professionals to look at these mistakes, provide some solutions, and hopefully provide you with some good advice on how to avoid similar mistakes, irregardless of starting a business or if you are already well on your way to success. So, with that in mind, let us dive into the first background story. So, this is kind of where I got my start as an accountant, I guess. Beyond working 6 days a week doing concrete, I decided on Sundays it would be a great idea to take on the bookkeeping tasks. I figured at that point in time it was a good way to save the company some money and kind of keep things moving and have an understanding of that type of work and where the money was and the cash flows and things of this nature. Looking back at it now, it was not a smart idea. I did have a bit of understanding of bookkeeping prior to jumping into it, but certainly not any formal education or any actual experience with the software. I'm sure what I provided to my accountant at that point in time was probably not the greatest work from a bookkeeper. And beyond that, it sucked up a lot of my time, especially considering that I only had that one day out of the week to take it easy. So now, when clients come into here, a lot of them will take on those bookkeeping tasks by themselves, but I would highly, highly recommend that you do hire a professional bookkeeper. That way, it allows you to take a step back and spend time on your business in areas that actually make you money, and you don't spend your time trying to figure out how to process payroll or post AR receipts or whatever else it is that you need to do. Leave that to someone that is experienced in that department and focus on making money. So, I've got a few questions along this line, and I just want to kind of touch on some of the benefits of actually bringing in that bookkeeper. So, I kind of mentioned it earlier, I don't think my reporting was all that great. So how does a bookkeeper help in this regard?
Well, with the reporting, the bookkeepers normally will follow CRI guidelines and know kind of what expenses you're able to claim, and just be more prepared for audits if you ever were to be audited and things like that. have good reporting, just in case you're with this in getting to a CRA audit.
For sure.
That you're claiming the right expenses. If you're filing GST, you want to be able to be claiming your sales and your expenses properly. Filing on time. Some people are quarterly, some people are annual GST filers, so you want to meet those deadlines. And with when you're starting your small business and trying to do the bookkeeping yourself, not all owners realize all of those time frames and deadlines and stuff like that. So it's always nice to have a professional kind of help you along the way.
For sure. So you kind of mentioned some of those CRA deadlines, GST, there'd be some payroll things to consider as well. Beyond that, how does a bookkeeper kind of help with the timeliness in being able to allow that business owner to make quality decisions? If you have your records into you on a regular basis, you can provide some of that reporting, and then I presume they could use that to, make some business decisions and have a better idea of kind of what's going on as far as good ideas to make.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. So with a professional bookkeeper doing the bookkeeping, they would be doing it more on a consistent basis and keeping your financial records up to date. So they would be able to provide you with income statements and balance sheets and kind of let you know where your company's sitting at all times.
Gotcha.
It's also good for, just keeping that business financials at the top of your head and always knowing kind of where your business is sitting, and gives you the time to kind of grow your business and move it into the area that you're kind of looking to grow. And
So I know this was a big thing with me, kind of the cost of bookkeeping. I always kind of had it in my head, if I'm doing it, I'm saving myself money, saving the company money. If I take all my stuff, give it to a bookkeeper, I'm just going to add one more bill, and it just, I couldn't make the decision to give that up at that time. But, as I've gotten into the industry, I've realized that not only is the bookkeeping an economical way to handle these type of things, but having you on team within a business provides so much more value than just, getting those receipts punched in there. So is there something that you kind of specifically see that kind of helps provide value to that client as you're kind of going through their records and doing that bookkeeping?
Yeah, I think most small business owners probably started out with you too, thinking we need to save money here and here and there, and then they could just do the books. It's easy to figure out, and I think a lot of commercials and the programs are providing people with maybe a little bit of not so great information about. It's easy to do the bookkeeping, you just take a picture of your receipt and away you go. It uploads it into the bookkeeping software, but there's a lot more to it than just that. And small business owners starting out always want to cut corners and save money, and in the long run, you probably won't be saving much money, because when you take your year end to the accountant, then they have to fix all of the issues. Where you're just going to spend more money at the accountant's office, and you might spend more money paying your taxes at the end of the year too, because you're not claiming all your expenses that you might not know that you can claim.
For sure.
So.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. When you see a file that comes in here that comes from a good bookkeeper, the work that we do as far as the compliance of, preparing that tax return and the financial statements, that work is very straightforward. We can get through it very easily with, a few hiccups.
Yeah.
Whereas if that file comes in, it's a mess. You spend a lot of time as accountants trying to get that fixed up, and we don't necessarily provide as much value to the client then as well, because we're focused on just getting the raw numbers fixed as opposed to maybe providing some value in maybe the advisory and the tax planning services. So to me, that's always why it's been a great idea to have that bookkeeper on there, because they're focused on their role, and then the accountant can kind of focus on
Right.
their role as
Yeah.
well. So I think that kind of wraps up that first story. Next one is one of my favorites. What do you need to know when you're hiring employees? So I guess I had a bit of a smart idea back then. I decided not to take on the payroll myself. And as far as I remember when we were doing this, all I had to do was get my employees to track their hours through, I think we were doing bi-weekly pay. They tracked the hours, they gave it to me, and then I would just send it into, at that time, my accountant, but obviously it can go to a bookkeeper. And then that individual just prepared the payroll for me. They provided the net check amounts that needed to go out to the employees, and then on a monthly basis, just supplied the remittances that I needed to pay. And I think, you know, looking back, this was probably one of the smarter things that I did, because, you know, to navigate the payroll legislation and to keep on top of things and, you know, to handle the cutoffs and all this, to me, it's just way too much for most people to handle, and it just makes a lot more sense to give it up and let a bookkeeper take that over. So, in thinking of that, what are some of the things that we need to kind of consider when hiring employees? I know there are TD1 forms. What are those, and is there anything other form related that we need to kind of consider?
Yeah, so when you're dealing with payroll, there's a lot of different things to keep in mind. You do need to get the TD1 form signed, so there is 2 TD1 forms, one for federal, one for provincial.
Okay.
And it just goes over the different tax situations that employee might be in.
Right.
And then that kind of determines what tax you take off of their pay.
Gotcha.
So those are very important forms to get, as well as figuring out, like if you're doing a bi-weekly payroll, a monthly payroll, that kind of a thing as well. There's different cutoffs for bi-weekly payroll as opposed to monthly payroll. So you need to be aware of those cutoffs, and yeah, there's always your source deductions that you have to pay.
For sure.
There's cutoffs for those too. So yeah, there's a lot of different things in the payroll kind of side of things that you might not realize or might miss until it's too late when you're doing the T4s.
For sure, for sure.
And they're not balancing and things like that. So yeah, it's nice to be able to have somebody that kind of has some kind of payroll background to kind of guide you in the right direction.
For sure. So as far as I know, and definitely not my area of expertise, I think most small business owners fall under the remittance period of just kind of paying once a month. So you get through, say, October now, and then those remittances would be due by mid-November. Is that kind of
Yes,
correct?
that is correct.
Okay.
Yes, so your source deductions are always due by mid-month the following month
Okay.
that we have taken the tax off. Yeah.
Gotcha. And that kind of relates to whether you pay your employees weekly, bi-weekly, whatever
Yes.
you kind of decide in that allotted month. It's just kind
It's-
of due
yeah,
into that
It's due in
mid-month.
that month, and then
Perfect.
it has to be paid by the middle of the next month.
Right on.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of pick whatever pay period you want, because I know, I think when we had started, I think we had it set up one way, but just due to maybe AR receipts or something like that, I think we found that if we shifted the payroll, kind of the timing for collection of AR versus paying out the wages kind of worked, so you can kind of do that as you see fit, I think.
Yes, you can. Preferably, you want to kind of make that change in January.
I don't think I did that.
Not throughout the year. It kind of gets a little wonky if you do
Right.
it mid-year. So,
Gotcha.
like say if you're paying your your employees monthly,
Mhm.
and then you want to flip over to bi-weekly, I would suggest waiting till the end of that year and then switching it over to the bi-weekly payments
Gotcha.
in January.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Make it easy on the bookkeeper
Yes.
so it gets out to your employees and everyone gets a paycheck and everyone's happy and the work
Exactly.
continues.
Yeah.
So with that said, I kind of had that bit of process that I had with my account. Is there anything specific that you kind of look for with your clients as far as, getting records in to be able to process it? Like, are there any specific cutoffs that you set, or do you like to see the information come in a certain way, or?
Yeah, usually, I will have specific forms for any of my clients. So
Okay.
there'll be like just employee forms that's all it has all the information listed for their employee to fill out that I will need to implement into our payroll system.
Okay.
So then we're not going back and forth asking like, I need this and I need that. I have all the information on one form.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's for new employees. So we'll do a new employee form, the TD1 forms.
Right.
As for collecting their timesheets and stuff, some
Hit or
of
miss?
them, yeah. Yeah, it depends. I usually, the clients are really good at sending me the timesheets on time.
Okay.
I'll have a specific day that they need to have the timesheets into me by.
Right.
Usually the payroll system, whichever system we're using, has a deadline for cutoff, so I have to
Okay.
have all the information uploaded at a certain time. So I just make sure that I have those timesheets in a timely manner so that I can get their payroll uploaded on time. And yeah, most of them are fairly good. Sometimes you have to chase the odd one, but
Right.
yeah.
Perfect. And I guess from my experience, managing and ensuring that the source deductions are paid on a regular basis is probably the most important thing to deal with
Yes.
CRA. Would you kind of agree with that?
I do agree with that, yes.
Okay.
Yes, paying the source deductions is very important, and it's not something that you kind of want to fall behind on,
Right.
because it will catch up to you pretty quick, and and when it has to do with your T4s and everything at the end of the year too, that gets a little
Right.
crazy too when
For
you're
sure.
trying to balance all of that. So yeah, it's very important to keep up with that,
Definitely.
source deductions and.
Yeah, and I think CRA's extra ignorant about this account because they view it as a trust account whereby you're just kind of taking those remittance amounts off of the checks, holding them in turn, and then pushing them onto the government. So if
Yes.
you're using those funds to buy supplies or
Yeah.
whatever the case might be, is they tend to frown upon that quite heavily.
Yes.
And I have seen some extremely significant penalties in that department. So I would
Yes.
highly recommend paying those on time because those penalties can add up
Yes.
in a very quick hurry.
Yes, that's one thing they're not very lenient on.
No, not at all. All right, so last topic, and this is just kind of touching on how to maybe deal with the seasonal business. So, we've kind of touched on this in previous episodes where, we got into the winter months, we had lease payments, loan payments, we had to support the business partners, personal lifestyles, there's ongoing insurance costs and all these things that kind of, add up. And I don't think I was properly prepared to kind of understand that or to manage that. So I'm just kind of wondering, and it kind of ties into that first topic, when you have that bookkeeper, how can they kind of help within the, the cash flow side of things and helping you just to kind of manage maybe some of those ebbs and flows, whether it's a seasonal business or if it's just kind of the regular course of, every business has those type of ups and downs. So is there anything that, business owners should kind of keep in mind as far as the seasonal business, reoccurring payments? Should they be kind of planning ahead to stash some of that cash away from the summer to kind of deal with these things? And how can you kind of help them with that as opposed to them just getting into mid-November and saying, what's going on here?
Like, I have that bill I need
Yeah,
to pay.
exactly.
Yeah, bookkeepers can definitely help with that, especially if you're a seasonal business, because you'll want to keep or enough money in the business account to pay your bills during the seasons where you're not working.
For sure.
So we can always give you like a list of monthly payments that are automatic that come out of your account. Just do like a review probably maybe before the season ends, and just go over all the things that you'll have to pay during the season that you're not working. Make sure you have enough cash flow in there for that. And then, just keep up on any CRA remittance that needs to be done. If they're quarterly GST, they'll still have to file that and pay that and all those kind of things. So definitely help with sitting down with the owners and figuring out what kind of cash flow they need to keep in there over the seasons they're not working.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I think that would have been hugely helpful to kind of have some of that planning in place beforehand as opposed to getting into it and having to scrimp and save and try and figure out where the next payment's going to come from. You have these things pre-planned, I think you've got a better chance of success going forward.
Yeah.
So how does the structure then of the business impact some of those cash flows? So I know when we started out initially, it was just kind of a partnership and everything was reported on our tax return, like the personal returns, and then into year 2, we had to go incorporated. So, is there certain things that maybe that business owner needs to consider if they're in that sole proprietor partnership mode versus corporations? Like, can they have wages or dividends? Is there ways to kind of maybe manipulate those a bit to make cash flows better in those winter months? Like, is the wage a good way to go if you're strapped on cash, I guess?
Yes, and I guess that will all depend on how much cash flow you've left in the account for the season that you're not working to pay all the bills, and whether you're going to take a wage or just do a dividend or that kind of a thing. So yeah, that's all kind of stuff that you would want to figure out right in the beginning, kind of before your season started, and then just to be better prepared so that you're not spending all your money and then you don't get a paycheck either over those months that you're not working.
So I guess if you had records into you on a timely basis, you'd be kind of up to date with those things, and you could probably say, this is what you've been taken out over the course of however many months.
Right.
If you want to kind of continue this personal lifestyle into the winter, you're either going to have to bump up some revenues and get some more funds in here, or you might have to look at subsidizing that income with maybe some third-party wages or something to that effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. And I guess just in closing with this one, is there, a way that you can kind of work with business owners to maybe have that discussion? Because I know when I was running this business, the remuneration between owners, it got to be a bit of a sticking point. So is it helpful to maybe have that third set of eyes looking at the books and saying, realistically, okay, this is what's going on. This is just the black and white of it.
Yeah.
This is what you've made. These are the cash flows. This is what you guys need to do. You think that probably has a positive impact on maybe some business relationships?
Yes, definitely. When you have that third party that's not directly involved in the business, it kind of opens up their eyes to the whole picture instead of just the working part of it or the client, getting the work or
For sure.
whatever part of the business they have.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it definitely would help having a third party. And you can get together with them on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis
Okay.
and just, touch base and let them know how their company's doing,
For sure.
how much money they need to, if they need to increase their sales or, cut back on maybe the amount they pay themselves or
For sure.
to get them through the next few months, but.
Right on. Yeah, and I think what I've noticed over the years is whether the business has an internal or external bookkeeper, I think the ones that, have one or the other and have someone that is well qualified in that position, they tend to do better over a longer period of time because I think, that information is readily available to that business owner in order to make, some of the bigger decisions. And that way you're not just kind of shooting in the wind hoping that things are gonna work out.
Yeah.
You can get through a project or part of it and you can probably get a bit of, job information back and you can kind of say, well, are we hitting our profit margins
Yeah.
and those types of things. So, there's a lot of benefits, I think, to having that quality bookkeeper in place, and I know that you definitely provide those type of services, so.
And there's lots of things that the bookkeeping software can provide too. Like if you have a specific job that you're doing and you want to allocate those expenses to that job and the revenue to that job and figure out if you made money on that job or lost money on that job, we can incorporate that into the bookkeeping as well.
Okay. Now, again, not my area of expertise, but I know, like you say, there are definitely some softwares that do that, and then there's some that maybe don't do that or don't do
Right,
that as
yes.
well. And I think it's kind of more of this when we've moved away from the desktop versions to more of this online
Online.
subscription thing that
It's changed a bit.
some of these features are there, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
Yes.
So is it best, say if you're getting into the construction industry or something where you want to do a bit of costing to let you know ahead of time that that's the route you're planning to take?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Let us know ahead of time so that we can set that up properly in the system,
Okay,
whatever system we're using at that time. And then, then we'll be able to allocate all the correct expenses to the correct project and the revenue to the correct project, so, yeah. And it doesn't have to be an ongoing basis, but it's a good start to kind of figure out, like, if you're just getting into the industry, say,
Right,
and you're
right,
trying
right.
to quote jobs, but maybe you're not, quoting them, like, adding in enough labor,
Right.
or, your percentage in supplies isn't high enough,
Gotcha.
right? Kind of gives you a good idea to where you kind of need to quote your next jobs.
yeah, and that kind of ties back into what I kind of mentioned before. When you have that bookkeeper that's taking on that role, then when that information gets into us, then we're able to kind of provide some advice on that and
Yes.
kind of walk you through it a bit. Because sometimes, we'll get a client that comes in and maybe the bank is requesting some of this for, rental properties or something to that effect. And then you've got to go back through the whole year and try and piece all this stuff together, and
Yeah.
it's just a nightmare to try and figure out, a year or whatever the case
Yes.
is after the fact.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it all kind of boils down to this whole theme of this series is having these professionals in place, touching base with them before you get too far into things,
Yes.
because they have all this wealth of knowledge that you may or may not have,
Yeah.
and then they can set you on the right track before you make some dumb mistakes like I did
Yeah.
back then.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right on. So I guess in closing, are there any, tips that you might have for small business owners that maybe you've been seeing recently with clients or anything to that effect?
I don't know, the main thing would be, would just be that you do need a bookkeeper for your business.
For sure.
You need to have that extra set of eyes, that extra expertise in that area to get your business running properly and to build it so that it is successful and you're not failing right from the get-go.
For sure.
So yeah, I know everyone wants to save money at the beginning, but saving money at the beginnings might not save you money in the long run.
Very good point.
So
for sure.
yes, I would just say that having a bookkeeper in your small business will be beneficial for you, even if you don't see it right at the forefront.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Hmm.
So Kelly, I just wanted to say thanks again for taking time out of your busy schedule to hop on the podcast. I know you've provided a lot of great value to the audience. And if they want to get a hold of you, what is kind of the best way to touch base with you?
If they want to get a hold of me, they can either call me or email me. So my number is 403-396-1506, or my email is b2bookkeeping@outlook.com. I also do have a website with all my information on it as well, which is www.b2bookkeeping.ca.
Perfect. I will definitely put all that in the show notes so anyone can touch base with you at their leisure. And once again, highly recommend Kelly. She has provided a lot of great work for a number of my clients over the past couple of years. So definitely look her up if you are in need of a quality bookkeeper. So for the Tax Talk podcast, I'm Jerry Pallon. Thank you for listening. Take care, and we will talk soon. That's it.